Hello, everyone, and welcome. As most of you know, I am S. Barry Hamdani, the relationship messenger. And today, I want to share some tips with you that I think is going to improve your relationships dramatically and in a very short period of time. So thank you for joining in. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Therefore, please like, subscribe, and share. I'm going to speak to you about 7 tips that I believe and has been proven to overcome 7 toxic elements in relationships. Now, I noticed when you read the thumbnail, it read something to the effect that are Black people too ignorant to have a successful marriage? My answer is no. However, I understand the background of such dialogue. And I think when we hear those arguments, which are somewhat fashionable and popularized today, it's because it is dealing with certain elements of Black culture. But overall, what I am telling you today, when I'm sharing with you, has to do with relationships in general. There are 7 toxic elements that all human beings practice, sometimes unknowingly of the practice, unknowing that those practices will have an adverse effect upon an otherwise healthy relationship. I'm going to talk about what those tips are and how they impact the relationships. However, I want to make the point that men and women, as you know, think differently. You have the Mars and Venus effect of communication. Sometimes what is said is not what we hear. Sometimes, based on what is said, we will infer something erroneously from that conversation, believing that what we gathered from it was an implication. But it was simply an inference on our part. Obviously, the difference being what we infer is the reality of the listener, and what is implied is the meant connotation of the speaker. So sometimes people say things and they're not implying anything. They're saying what they mean, and we, the hearer, infer something different from it. For example, a man may ask his wife, "Honey, are you going to make dinner?" And she said, "Well, do you want dinner?" And he may go, "Yes, what are my choices?" Her answer may be yes or no. Those are your choices. And as funny as those things may sometimes be, that is the nature of communication. Sometimes a woman may feel that in giving her husband the silent treatment for a week, that she has somehow gotten his attention. But a man, in a typical man's thinking, may come back a week later and say something to the effect that, "Honey, you know what? We got along really well for the last week or so." But that is the difference in our thinking. Now, I promised you tips, because if I can give you a tip that will improve your relationship, obviously you will want it, won't you? And if you see that these tips are actually improving your relationship, then chances are you're going to adhere to that wisdom, wouldn't you? And if these tips help your mate to communicate with you better, then each of you would probably improve it. Don't would approve of it, don't you think? Tip 1. Here's something that most of us often do. We may respond to a mate who's made a point that has hurt him or her, or it may be a point of criticism, or it's a point that we don't like to hear. So how do we sometimes respond? Sometimes we'll say things like, "That's no big deal. Get over it." But in doing so, you've created a divide between yourself and your mate. You've created some division there. And that's not necessary, because the other person begins to think that you think something is wrong with them, and perhaps you don't care. There's a better way of handling that. Here it is. Why not, rather than tell someone that it's no big deal, knowing that it was obviously a big deal to them or they wouldn't have mentioned it. If you love them, why not respond this way? "Hey, I see that that is important to you. And I see that that somehow is bothering you. So can you tell me specifically what it is that is bothering you and how I can help?" It's really that simple. Those are principles based upon love. And I hear Christian people all the time talking about their relationship with God, quoting all kinds of scripture, but are unable to impart love when it is needed most, which is at home. One of the other things that I often hear formatted is that, "Oh, you're too sensitive," or "You're too emotional," or you are too something. You are too insecure. You haven't solved anything with that. You've only pointed out to your mate that you would rather judge them than to listen to them. I am humbly suggesting to you that you may say something to the effect that, "Hey, I think I might know how that makes you feel. Is it this? Is it that? Have I heard you correctly?" Those are responses based on love. Anything else is a response based upon judgment. And shame on you, those of you who call yourselves Christians. When 1 Corinthians 13 reads that without love you are nothing. Though you have faith to move mountains, though you bestow all your goods to feed the poor, though you have wisdom to solve all mysteries, and you have not love, you are nothing. What does this topic have to do with the love? Everything. Because underlining all of these responses to these 7 situations is love, or negatively, it is a response that is not coming from a place of love. Now, I've mentioned 2 of those judgments, one being not a big deal, get over it. Another being, you're just too something, too emotional, too sensitive, or whatever. And I've given you solutions in terms of how you might respond to that. Now, number 3, you're just like your mother, or you're just like your father, or you're just like my ex. No, they are not. You're just not listening. And when I referred to Black culture earlier, that is one of the most prominent things that sticks out in relationships with the Black people. That's a judgment that Black men and women generally go to when they want to criticize. Now, more often than not, it is men that use that crutch. But rather than blaming someone for being someone they are not, for sounding like someone else, why not just simply ask a question? Ask them, what do you mean by that? Because when I hear that, it reminds me of someone else that I had a negative experience with. And honey, I know you're not that person, but I want to make you aware of what I experience eternally when I hear it. See, there's a solution. Number 4, you criticize your mate for doing something the wrong way. And you're saying to them, this is the right way to do it. Now, that negative response, or that negative incentive in that you're giving someone an incentive to respond to you negatively. So you say, do it my way. Making such a statement divides, because you're dealing with human beings. And what makes you think that your way is the right way? Now, that's a behavior that you will see predominantly in women. Regarding Black culture, that is something that you will hear often coming from Black women. And let me tell you why. I'll give you just a little history to that. Just a little bit. During slavery, slave masters often taught the African to do something in the wrong way, the African man. Then he took the woman and showed her the right way to do it. Then he called them out in groups, men and women, and he asked the Black man to perform that thing that he, the master, had taught them. Well, obviously the Black man did it the wrong way because he had been taught the wrong way. And then the slave master gets upset and calls the woman and asks her to do it, and she performs it the right way. On and on and on and on, that was done during slavery to demean the Black man. Why? Because they understood something about our culture. They understood that the Black men were kings. Polygamy was practiced at that time in Africa, so the Black men generally had lots of wives. And in order to have that number of wives, to which most of them were Muslims, and in the faith there are surahs, scriptures in the Muslim faith that states that a man has to be able to take care of all of those wives, not just in feeding them and providing shelter, but in leading them and showing them how to do things effectively when the man wasn't around. The slave master, knowing that, began to use these practices to assassinate the character of the Black man and to destroy his leadership of the woman and his family so that she would return to Massa for instructions and then denounce the black man at home and in public. So this is why you're hearing today a lot of noise and flack with black men and black women. Those things are well ingrained in black culture. Black women do these things and they don't even realize it. Now, they may say to people in the manosphere, why are you pointing out women and you're not pointing out men? However, I did. I just showed you in those three examples things that are more representative of feminine behavior as opposed to masculine behavior, things that are representative of the black male as opposed to the black female. But to answer the question, why do you hear people speaking to these subjects regarding black women, is because of what I implied earlier. The man's leadership role has been attacked for a reason. Therefore, we focus upon the attacks of the black women upon that leadership role, even though they may not be conscious of why they are doing it. We know from whence it emanated, and we know why it has effectuated the behavior of black women. And we're just simply pointing it out so that intelligent people, as are in my audience, can be made aware of it, stop practicing those things, and at least know why some of the things that are fashionable in the black community are so powerfully destructive. Let me get to the fourth tip. To the fifth tip. I think the fourth tip was why, and I'm going to summarize it, why you do something this way and not my way. Tip number 5. I'm done. Saying to someone that you're done because you didn't have your way. Getting upset and saying that you want a divorce. What inevitably happens there is you're not going to be able to unring that bell. And you've planted a seed. And your words are incredibly powerful and prophetic. So weave them wisely. Because those very words would come back to haunt you. So rather than telling your loved one that you are done and that you want a divorce, why not instead say something to the effect that your behavior makes me feel like saying I'm done. And when you do what you just did or say what you just said, that makes me feel like saying I want a divorce. But I am not saying I am done. I am not saying I want a divorce, because that's simply not what I want. That's simply how it makes me feel. Another point. Number 6. You make me feel a certain way. No, no one made you feel anything. Maybe they did or said something that impacted you in a certain way that you felt a certain way. It doesn't mean that they were right in what they did. They may have been wrong. If they were wrong, say that they were wrong. But don't say that it made you, that the person made you feel a certain way. It was the action that made you feel a certain way, and you need to distinguish the two. Saying that a person made you feel a particular way makes the person defensive. If you mention the act caused you to feel a certain way, then you have empowered the person to take a different action than the action they took in the situation that you're criticizing. Does that make sense to you? Does those points ring a bell? Does it make you feel that you can do something different in your relationship today that's going to help? See, in that point that I talked about in saying that a person is too sensitive or too emotional, let me tell you what happens in that situation. And let me tell you why you're saying it. Generally, people say that if they moved too fast in the relationship, if they became too intimate, or if they became intimate too soon in that relationship, that is one of the things that they are likely to say when something is not going their way, and when they don't want to be in that emotional space with someone. They may say, oh, you're into your emotions, you're too insecure, you're too emotional. No, the truth is you have been promiscuous. You jumped in bed with that man before you had really developed something meaningful. That's not always the case, but it's usually the case. Now, when that is not the case, when it is not the case that you've been in that man's bed, it's because that's where you want to be. You're trying to force an intimate relationship, or you're trying to force intimacy in a relationship when it's not there. You may have only just literally slept in the bed with the man and nothing happened. But what you don't understand about a man is that you sent a particular signal to him. And now you want to withdraw. So what the man interpreted from your closeness with him, even if he just hugged you in bed, is that you wanted more. So now he is responding emotionally, and you are upset because you feel that nothing has happened intimately. Well, the answer is it did. Nothing happened sexually, but it did happen intimately. And there's probably another point I made a note of. Oh, saying nothing. Saying nothing. Your response to your mate is to say nothing. Sometimes that's a good thing to do. It depends on whether or not you explain why you are saying nothing. When a woman goes into the space where she gives the man the silent treatment, there are many inferences that he can take from that. He can tell himself, well, it's just that time that she's going through a cycle, if you know what I mean. And that may not be the case. If there has been problems in the relationship, he will wonder if she has been cheating. Now, I know that it's popular in society to say, well, men and women, they're equal. So if a man gets quiet and he doesn't want to talk, does that mean that he's cheating? Well, not necessarily. Well, Barry, why do you say that's the indication of a woman? I'm saying it because women and men respond differently. One response is naturally feminine. Another response is naturally masculine. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It means they are different. What do I mean? When a man goes quiet, he's likely to tell you why he's withdrawing. He's likely to tell you, hey, I'm not going to argue with you. I've made my point. It seems you don't want to hear me. So I'm going to drop the conversation and I'm going to take a ride or go to the golf course or do whatever they do, go to a bar, whatever, wherever they go for peace when they're not having peace in the home, it's where they're going. Now, that's highly masculine behavior in terms of explaining why you're withdrawing and then withdraw. It's naturally feminine to just withdraw and get into your emotional space. It is often wise for a man to withdraw because he's not going to win the argument anyway. And if the woman wants to argue, an intelligent, mature, strong man is going to let her know in a few words that he is going to withdraw and not participate. Women generally are going to be upset because he's withdrawing. When he explains why he is withdrawing, and this is especially true in the black culture, the black woman is going to have a tantrum like a little child. She's going to have a fit. You better not go out that door. She's going to put her hands on her hip and shake her big head with horsehair on it, all proudly as if it were her own hair, and that's another conversation. And dare you to walk out the door. That's her masculine energy. She'll get in your face and dare you to walk out the door because you won't stay there and accept her verbal and emotional abuse. Now, I told you earlier where that type of behavior came from. The black king in Africa is kidnapped, brought to America, and he is stripped before his woman and family. And when he does something the wrong way, and Massa brings the woman to do it the right way, he has her, he the master, have her confront the man and tell him in her own words why he doesn't know what he's doing. And she turns around and thanks Massa for having shown them each the right way to do it. And the master becomes excited because his plan is working. See, media at that time was the congregation of people. So he brought the congregation of people together. That was the TV and newspaper of that time. It especially replaced what we get from TV today because it has a visible audience. And in that media, he tore down the black man. He asked him, why is it, N-word, that she can do it right and you can't? And I showed you both the same thing, which he did not. So that plants a sense of superiority in the mind of the black woman. The seed has been planted. The seed of white supremacy was obviously apparent in the entire environment because you were dealing with slavery, people who were not free. Now, a subtle seed of white supremacy, colored in black female, is implanted in her mind. And until this day, we still see it active in black and white relationships. Are black people too ignorant for marriage? No. In my humble opinion, no. However, are we informed of the nature of the subtleties and their origin, which causes people to act a particular way toward one another. Is the black woman aware of these Machiavellian machinations of slavery and how they've been fed into her and how she acts them out? Is she aware of that? My answer is no. They're generally not aware. And therefore, the black woman has become an effective puppet. Who needs the KKK and skinheads when you have an insider doing your dirty work for you? The Bible says that in the last days, a man's enemy would be of his own household. I'm afraid, black man, that your enemy is of your own household. And until it is faced and dealt with intelligently, then the relationship quotient, the intelligence that is required to be applied in those relationships is not going to happen, because the relationship intellect is very low. The question is, again, are black people too ignorant for marriage? Well, we know according to Pew Research that only 25% of black women will ever be married. Does that mean they are too ignorant to get married? No, it means they are not informed and they are not skillful. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Until we talk again, Esbari Hamdani out. May God bless you. Goodbye.